Hey guys, here we are, chapter 14, section 2. We're going to talk about supplies of non-renewable resources. Where are they? How much are they? What can we get? These kind of things. Now, obviously, they're non-renewable, so they exist in finite amounts. There's only so much out there, and once we get it and take it out of the ground, it's not going to be back in our lifetime. Now, for the most part, there's an awful lot out there, matter of finding it, getting to it, etc. It can become economically depleted when it costs more than it is worth to find it, extract it, and process the remaining deposits. We may know there's some low-grade copper ore, but if it costs us more money to get the ore than we can actually sell the ore, it's not worth going and getting it. So we may note this is an area where we have low-grade copper, and when the prices go up, it might become financially feasible to get it then. Several ways to extend the supply. We realize it's getting lower, so what do we do to expend the supply, especially when we have minimal resources of it? And these methods are often limited either by economic or environmental factors. Once again, we may know it's there, it just costs too much, so an economic factor. We may know it's there, but the destruction to their surrounding environment in order to get it would cost too much. Not enough value. It's in a preserve somewhere that's just going to cause too much problem. When it comes to our reserves, now if they're economically depleted, so we're just really talking economics, and we're talking about the reserves that we have. So when we talk about reserves, this means we have identified deposits which we can extract at the current prices. So we may say our copper reserves in the United States are, in other words, we know we can get this many tons of copper and keep the copper at this price. That's when we talk about our reserves. Now, we may have economic depletion. This is when the extraction is going to cost more than the remaining deposits are worth. Once again, it's that low grade. We know it's there, it just costs too much to get it right now. So it could become economically depleted. Or we'll also talk about depletion time. The time it's going to take to use a certain portion, usually 80%. We can look and we say, okay, the time to depletion on this mine is 2 years, 3 years, 9 years, whatever it might be. We figure it would take 9 years to use 80% of the reserve at the current given rate. As a general rule, the stuff is being bought and sold, and we can kind of track how many tons of copper are being sold a year on the world market. This is what we base our numbers off of. So we talk about our reserves, we'll talk about economic depletion, and we'll talk about depletion time. How long do we have before we run out in this area? And we could talk about a particular mine, we could talk about the US, we could talk about the world. Usually we're talking about regionally in some shape, form, or fashion. Now, when something becomes economically depleted, there are options that we can do and oftentimes have to. We can recycle or reuse existing supplies, especially when it comes to things like aluminum and copper. We do this pretty well. Even you and I at the home, we're tossing our aluminum cans in a recycle bin, and those can actually be reused quite well. So the first option is, when we're starting to get economically depleted, is reuse or recycle what we already have. It takes a lot less energy than taking it out of the ground anyway. We can waste less. When something doesn't cost much, the odds of us just throwing it away when we're done with it are much higher. So when the price of something starts to go up, we tend to waste less of it. And ideally, this is something we would waste less of no matter what it is. But once again, when something starts getting more expensive, we're much more careful about reusing it or recycling it. Even if we're talking about like my gold jewelry, rarely would I throw this away. I'd at least take it back to a jeweler and try and get some money back for it, and somebody else can use it. We can just use less. When it comes, let's talk about gold. Have it for this. Well, we need gold in our smartphones and a lot of our electronics. There are certain manufacturing uses that really need gold, but do you and I really need gold as jewelry? We want it, but it's an option we could use less. I don't have to have a gold necklace, not that I wear one, or gold earrings. I could opt for something different. So sometimes the option just comes down to use less. We can find a substitute. If we're using gold in electronics, well, we could use silver. It's also a good conductor of electricity. We may have to use more of it, and the thing could get more bulky, which is why often we use gold, because we can use less of it. But if it's just becoming so rare we can't get our hands on it, it's economically depleted, we may simply have to use less or do without. If something's completely gone, one of the options are to do without it. If we can't find a substitute, it's gone, there's nothing we can do. Now, if you look at the curves I'm throwing up here, we have a red, a blue, and a green. And this is what we're talking about when they become economically depleted. Well, when we're talking about reserves, there are different protocols we can look at. So you notice A, or the red one, has a very high, but it's short. So we're talking about the reserves. We say, well, the depletion time would be very quick here. This means we're going to use it, throw it away, we're not going to recycle it, we're not going to do without. In this case, our depletion time would be quite quick. We're going to mine it all, we're not going to reuse it. In the second one, we're saying, well, but if we are recycling and we are reusing and some things, the depletion time would be longer. And then down all the way to C, we're going to recycle it, we're going to reuse it, we're going to be conservative with it, we're going to use less, just kind of this whole thing. If we take this thing and we take it very seriously from the beginning and we realize our limitations and we're really careful with it, the depletion time can be much longer. It can be twice as long. Once again, it all depends on what the resource is that we're going after, how much of it is there, and it's important. So our depletion times can vary wildly depending on, a lot of times, your and our use or intended use of the resource. One of the resources we talk about are rare earth metals. Now, normally we're thinking about going and getting aluminum and tin and gold and silver, these things that you and I run into and interact with on a daily basis. Well, a lot of the resources we're really after out there, mineral resources, are rare earth metals. They're rare. There's not that many of them out there in the world, or they're in this one little area predominantly, because these geological processes dictate where some of these things are going to be created by the earth and therefore found. So some of these rare earth metals are hard to come by. And a lot of them you've heard of if we're talking about like lithium or something. But a lot of cerium, lanthanum, dysprosium, neodymium, terbidium, a lot of these things are used in a lot of things that you and I use. Technologies, things made with these rare earth metals, LED light bulbs, LCD flat screens. Think of all of our flat screen TVs, computers. All of these things are using rare earth metals. Solar cells, our solar panels to get energy from the sun, fiber optic cables, batteries. Now, batteries sometimes in the cell phones, but especially in like the electric cars, right? It takes a lot of battery power to run an electric car, and they're dependent on some of these rare earth metals, especially some of these neodymium for the magnets, the terbidium. A lot of these are needed in those. And even the smartphones that we use. What I film on all the time is just my smartphone. And these rare earth metals are needed for a lot of the technologies that you and I actually rely on all the time, every day. Now, the market prices of things have to do with supply and demand. If we get higher prices, once again, this thing that I'm used to getting, whether it's gold or this or copper, or I'm going to go buy my cell phone, well, if the prices go up, a lot of things can actually happen. The price of copper skyrockets. Well, all of a sudden, now we are encouraged to explore for new deposits. the price has gone up. Oh wow, man, if we find some of this, we can sell it and make a lot of money. So we begin exploring and looking for new areas to find it. It can stimulate development of better technology. We know there's copper ore over there. It's just that it's low-grade ore. If we could find a better way to extract it, a cheaper way to extract it, then now we can make money. So a lot of times it can stimulate this development of better mining technologies. Can we do it quicker, cheaper, less energy? It just makes it profitable to go after those lower ores. When copper was selling, I'm going to make up a number, at $1 a kilo, well, it wasn't worth getting it. Now that copper is being sold for $9 a kilo, it's profitable to go get the lower grade ore. So prices have an effect on what we're going to go after. It promotes conservation. If it's more expensive, we tend to treat it more carefully. We don't just throw it out easily. Ooh, let's see, can we reuse it? Can we fix it? And it also promotes theft. Copper prices have gone up and copper thievery has gone up with it. People have been known to go and strip copper piping out of houses being built, from power lines or set aside. They'll steal it because they can take it to a scrapyard and make money for it. So a lot of times when the price of something goes up, it also encourages thieves to go after it. Once again, trying to make an easy buck. Now, subsidies, tax breaks, and import tariffs tend to control the supply and demand of the prices of these key mineral resources. Like we're talking about copper, it's used in so many things, or gold, or a lot of these rare earth metals. Well, there's a lot of subsidies involved in it that we're paying companies that go after and mine it subsidies, because we say, you know what? Lithium is an important American commodity. We need it to make our cell phones. Some of our military technology depends on these rare earth metals. So we tell a company, hey, we need that thing, so we're going to give you special tax breaks if you'll go out there and get this. Or you know what? Nobody's really allowed to mine on this land over there, but we're going to give you mining rights because we need that mineral so much. So this is where they get tax breaks and or subsidies in order to go after the material, which falsely sort of lowers the price again. And it gives the company the incentive to go after it. So sometimes these subsidies are done specifically because we feel we desperately need that ore for our way of life, if you will. And anywhere between 5 and 22% of a mining company's gross income comes from taxpayers' subsidies. We're giving them breaks. But once again, this is just what can help control that supply and demand and deal with the prices, keep the prices in a way that economies continue to move on. So part of this economic situation comes into these lower grade ores. What do? We're mining, once gold. We're done with high grade ore. We haven't had high grade ore of gold really for a long time. We're digging up dump trucks of dirt in order to get small amounts of gold. It's still very valuable, so you get a small amount and it's worth a lot. Increased cost and energy to mine and process these large volumes of ore. If I've got to dig up a dump truck of dirt to get one gold band of gold, well, there's a lot of energy involved in that, right? We've got to dig it up, we've got to transport the dirt, we've got to leach out the gold, the different processes, the chemicals we need to get the gold out, and we have to refine it, all this process. It all takes a lot of energy. Also, availability of fresh water. A lot of these mining operations need lots and lots of water. They're flushing things out. We're using chemical reactions in a lot of them. And if we don't have access to fresh water, once again, we need water to live, we need water for food, we need water for animals, the whole thing. Mining needs a lot of water as well. As supplies get limited, it limits what we can actually mine. And also just improving the mining technology. One of the more interesting technologies out there is actually using microorganisms. We call it bio-mining. It's very environmentally friendly, it's effective, it's just a very slow process. So it hasn't been as economically feasible. However, as we continue to make improvements in this technology, it might be a field for the future that we can really pull a lot of minerals out, especially somewhere like the ocean. The ocean is rich in minerals that are dissolved in it. The problem? They're in really low concentrations. There's a lot of gold in the ocean. It's just very diluted. You'd have to sift through so much salt water to pull a reasonable measure of gold out. It's not cost effective. Now, we have found deposits of minerals in sediments along kind of the shallow coastal shelf and near the shorelines. So we do know of deposits in the ocean that we can go after. Some along the shore, also hydrothermal vents. Remember we talked about the black smokers. I put a picture of one up here again. Well, as this mineral-rich water comes up through the hydrothermal vents, it precipitates out. That black chimney is just precipitated minerals. It's very mineral-rich area because it's pumping up from the ground. And within that, we find a lot of needed minerals or some of these rare earth metals that we can go after. And then metals on the ocean floor. Out in the Pacific, we have a lot of these manganese nodules that they form and they're sitting on the ocean floor. Now, obviously, we have a lot of issues or problems. We're talking about mining in the ocean. It's all underwater. This makes it very expensive, difficult to go after. And if we start dredging up a lot of the ocean bottom, trying to go after minerals, there's a lot of potential ecological problems with doing that. Disrupting the entire sea floor, going after minerals, and we have to do a lot of it. Remember, the mineral resources are there, but they're dilute. So it takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of money backing to be able to go after it. And right now, it's not incredibly cost effective. This is an area for the future. That's where some of that biomining may really pay off. It's a long-term investment, but it may pay off big for us. Lots of ways to go out there and find the minerals, lots of places where the minerals are, and we kind of have to look at this supply and demand. Do we need it? How much of it is there? Is it economically feasible to get after it? And is it environmentally feasible to get it to keep our environment in check? Guys, that wraps it up. Come back next time and we'll look specifically at the environmental effects of using these non-renewable mineral resources. Take care and we'll see you next time.